One step past.
Way past strange. Bobby Farrell of Boney M and the Curse of Rasputin. Boney M was a popular disco group in the late 1970s and early 1980s. The leader of the group was singer and dancer Bobby Farrell. He was extremely animated and theatrical. A lot of disco singers were showy, but he was showier than most. Boney M had a lot of big hits, but one of their biggest was Rasputin, a song about the controversial, real-life Grigori Rasputin. The real Rasputin was, and still is, quite mysterious. His activities led to the overthrow of the Russian government and the end of monarchy in that country. Rasputin died violently, and even in death he still scares people. Rasputin has been vilified countless times in media. One of the most notable accounts is his role as the villain in the first Hellboy movie. Did Rasputin really have mystical powers? The song Rasputin was released in 1978 and became a big hit. Although Boney M was liked by Russia and invited to play there, they were forbidden to perform that particular song due to the lyrics. The song itself is an upbeat party song, but it mocks Rasputin and touches on some historical matter that was still deemed inappropriate. Bobby Farrell himself would often dress up as Rasputin while performing this song. Many years later, Bobby would be able to sing this song in Russia. He died the very next morning. There wasn't a mark on him, no sign of violence, but his death was extremely suspicious. Why was Bobby's death so weird? We will get into the reasons for that later in the video. First, we need to take a look at the life and legend of the man who has been dubbed the Mad Monk. The real Rasputin. Grigori Rasputin was born in 1869 as a simple peasant in Russia. We really don't know very much about his youth and early adulthood. In 1887, he married a peasant girl named Praskovya Dubrovina. Although she remained devoted to Rasputin until his death, he was not at all faithful to her. Rasputin had countless extramarital affairs. Together they had 7 children, although only 3 of them survived to adulthood. Rasputin was always a sketchy guy. Today he would probably be referred to as white trash. For some reason, in 1897, he developed a renewed interest in religion and left the small village where he and his family resided. One theory is that he was running away from being charged for horse theft. Another theory is that he was trying to get away from the wife and kids. Yet another theory is that he had some sort of spiritual crisis. At any rate, Rasputin became the Rasputin we know at age 28. Rasputin went to the St. Nicholas Monastery in Verkhovturia and spent several months there. We don't know what all went on there, but he came out of the monastery a changed man. He looked disheveled and kept that look for the rest of his life. He acted spookier than he ever did before. Rasputin was now a vegetarian, abstained from alcohol, and prayed and sang more heavily than he ever did before. We do know that he didn't stay away from drinking. He thought of himself as a supreme holy man right from the start. Rasputin would leave home for months, even years, as he wandered the country. By the early 1900s, he developed a small cult following. There have always been a lot of sheep in this world. It was clear that he was trying to make himself a god. Very early on, he was known to have a lot of girlfriends. He and his followers were into a lot of bad behavior that legitimate churches did not agree with. Some of these things included the singing of strange songs and different manners of self-punishment. It was clear that Rasputin was using Christianity as a mask for what he was really preaching. Rasputin, MD. Rasputin was never a doctor, but when did he start positioning himself as a healer? An exact date for this is unknown, but certainly in 1904 or 1905 is when he peddled his healing powers in the city of Kazan. He wasn't doing this for free. He had to make his money somewhere. Whatever problem you had, Rasputin could surely fix it, for a price. Isn't it nice to have a spiritual handyman? He networked and got himself in good with church leaders. They introduced Rasputin to various members of aristocracy. It was as easy as that. Rasputin just talked his way in like any good con man. Also, he had a reputation for having many flings with female followers. Maybe he was acting like a pimp. There was something Rasputin had that these rich fat cats wanted. Whatever it was, he was in their social circle, and that's where he stayed. Rasputin became friends with Archimandrite Theovan, an archbishop who became his greatest ally in Kazan. It was Theovan who was well connected in St. Petersburg society. By late 1905, Rasputin was introduced and became fast friends with a lot of rich and powerful people. Big money, big money. Rasputin never had good manners, but they allowed it. He was more or less viewed as an amusing character, but they wanted him around for reasons of their own. Did they really believe in his healing powers? Was he offering something else to them? The fact that so many stuffy, nose-up-in-the-air rich people would have anything to do with this scurvy individual is just plain weird. It didn't make sense back then, and it wouldn't make sense now. It's easy to understand why some people believed Rasputin had powers of mass hypnosis. Rasputin simply worked his way up the social ladder. His aristocratic connections in St. Petersburg finally led to a meeting with the Tsar on November 1st, 1905. Nicholas and his wife Alexandra were delighted to have met him and really thought he was a man of God. As fast as Rasputin worked his audiences, it was strange that he went back to his home village and didn't see the Tsar again until July 18th, 1906. The next time after that would be in October of 1906 when he met the Tsar's children for the first time. Rasputin held a loose association with the royal family for quite a while before he really settled in late 1906. Was this part of his strategy? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. When Rasputin was finally brought into the family, it was as the role of healer for their son Alexei. Welcome to the family. Just like that, Rasputin became an indispensable part of the imperial family's entourage. How cool was it to have your own personal holy man and doctor? They were in desperate need of his services, and, of course, Rasputin was happy to oblige. The youngest child in the family, and the only son, was Alexei. He suffered from hemophilia, a condition that makes it hard for blood to clot. The smallest cut could potentially cause the boy to bleed to death. It was extremely serious, and he suffered regularly. This is when things start to get real interesting. On many different occasions, Alexei would be in serious pain and bleeding. Rasputin would seemingly ease the pain and stop the bleeding in short order. He wasn't a real doctor, so how did he do it? In 1907, Alexei suffered from an internal hemorrhage. Alexandra called upon Rasputin to pray for the boy. By the next day, the boy had fully recovered. Just what exactly was this? By late 1906, for sure, is when Rasputin claimed to be a mind reader and have other mental powers. This detail is important to remember because in 1912, Rasputin appeared to cure Alexei from a far distance. This time, the boy was in severe pain, delirious, and very close to death. A telegram was sent to Rasputin, who was in Siberia at the time. Rasputin wrote back quickly and told them all would be well and that the boy would not die. His only instruction to them was to keep the doctors away. They did as they were told, and Alexei's bleeding stopped the very next day. A doctor who attended Alexei after the fact stated that his recovery was totally inexplicable from a medical point of view. This shouldn't have happened, but it did, and the royal family was very happy. It was remote faith healing. All the imperial children loved Rasputin. He was just like a friendly uncle. But things weren't as rosy as they seemed. Rasputin had been accused of rape by the nursery governesses. He had also been rumored by some to be having inappropriate relations with the Tsarina and her 4 daughters. Whether any of this happened is speculation. What we do know is that the Tsar ordered Rasputin to leave St. Petersburg for a while. Rasputin went to Palestine. Despite the scandal, the family still remained in contact with Rasputin until his death. Rasputin the politician. Rasputin added crooked politician to his list of special skills. He was so much a part of the royal family unit that he was given the official position of lamplighter. His duty was to keep the lamps lit before religious icons in the palace. This allowed Rasputin to have close access to the royal family. His influence, however, far exceeded the powers that a lamplighter should have. Whatever he wanted seemed to get done. He also took bribes and sexual favors from admirers. As early as 1907, the rest of the Russian people were starting to greatly dislike Rasputin. He seemed to have a very strong hold on the royal family. The church denounced him as a heretic. The Tsar's secret police investigated Rasputin's activities, but they weren't able to find anything worth exiling him for. Old allies were turning against him. The Archbishop Theovan, who had been so instrumental in getting Rasputin in touch with St. Petersburg society, stated that Rasputin was a danger to the monarchy. Word of Rasputin's improprieties with the Tsarina and her daughter spread even faster than before. Rasputin was also accused of being the puppet master for the Tsar's ministers, making them do his bidding. Was all of this blown out of proportion? Rasputin did have a great amount of influence for a fact, but how much of this was true? Public opinion was quick to form. Things weren't that terrible before Rasputin came into the picture, but they were certainly terrible now. The Russian government itself was too imposing. The royal family's image was tarnished due to their association with Rasputin, who many people believed was a dangerous criminal. There had also been a sharp economic decline. A perfect storm was brewing, and things were about to come to a head. Rasputin must die! In 1914, an assassination attempt was made on Rasputin but failed. He was stabbed in the stomach, and the wound was gravely serious, but he managed to recover. This didn't do anything but further the superstition that Rasputin really had evil powers of black magic. In the early morning of December 30th, 1916, another assassination attempt was made on Rasputin by a group of conspirators. This one was successful, but it took a great deal of effort. His death became as mysterious as the man himself. Rasputin was lured into the basement of the home of Felix Yusupov, the husband of the Tsarina's niece. According to what Felix himself later said, Rasputin was tricked into eating poisoned cake and drinking poisoned wine. Neither of these had an effect on him. Over 2 hours passed. Felix went to retrieve a pistol, then returned, shooting Rasputin in the chest. It was believed that Rasputin was dead. One of the conspirators put on Rasputin's coat and hat, pretending to be him, and went to Rasputin's apartment to make it look like he returned home. When Felix returned home to ensure Rasputin was dead, the man suddenly leaped up and attacked him. Felix managed to break free of Rasputin and fled into the courtyard, where Rasputin followed in hot pursuit. It was there where another man shot Rasputin twice. One of these bullets went into Rasputin's forehead. The freakish man dropped into a snowbank, and this time they were pretty sure he was dead. Besides the bullet wounds, there was a deep slice on his left side, among many other injuries. Rasputin's body was wrapped in a cloth. The killers then drove to the Petrovsky Bridge. From there, his body was dropped into the Malaya Nevka River. News of his murder had spread quickly, even before his body was found on January 1st. There has long been speculation that Rasputin was castrated. A lot of people still believe this, but Dmitry Kasaratov, the city's senior autopsy surgeon, said that his genitals were still intact. There has also been a long-standing rumor that Rasputin was alive when they threw him in the river, meaning that the true cause of death was by drowning. Dmitry, however, also reported that there was no water in the lungs, meaning that Rasputin couldn't have died by drowning and was already dead before he went in. Then again, Dmitry also couldn't find any trace of poison in Rasputin, and Felix freely admitted to poisoning Rasputin a lot. As a matter of fact, shooting Rasputin was a last resort. So what can we make of this autopsy report? Was Dmitry being truthful? Or was he paid off by the government to make Rasputin's death seem less fantastic? Why would some of these grisly details about Rasputin's death still persist? More importantly, there were people involved in the plot who claimed to have seen the castration. A cold, cold winter. Grigori Rasputin was buried on January 2nd, 1917. Curiously, the funeral was attended only by the imperial family and a few of their close friends. Rasputin's wife, mistress, and children were not invited. Well, what happened after that? The Tsar remained in power, but not for much longer. The Russian people were still in a state of unrest. Nicholas II abdicated on March 15th. Just giving up his throne wasn't enough. The royal family needed to leave Russia, but no other country wanted to give them asylum. Shortly after Nicholas abdicated, Rasputin's body was exhumed and burned. This was done so his grave wouldn't become a shrine for supporters of the old regime. Perhaps they also wanted to make sure that Rasputin was completely destroyed. Some eyewitnesses to this claimed that Rasputin's body sat up in the bonfire. This may have been due to improper preparation of the body, but how weird is that? On April 30th, 1918, the family went to the Ipatiev house. They were later executed there on July 17th, 1918. It was a highly unnecessary act, but it reinforced the message that Tsarism was over in Russia. Back to Bobby Farrell. Rasputin's life and death is quite curious and interesting. He was such a phenomenon that it was inevitable people were going to talk and write about him. In 1978, the disco group Boney M made their contribution to Rasputin mythology with their hit song, Rasputin. Bobby Farrell was the only man in the group, so he was clearly the featured singer. Many years after the original Boney M broke up, Bobby was finally able to perform the song in Russia. On December 29, 2010, Bobby sang all the big hits, including Rasputin, in St. Petersburg. Bobby was known for dressing up as Rasputin when he performed this song. He complained of breathing problems before and after the show. No one seemed to think too much about it. He was 61 years old and still in good physical shape. Bobby was on tour and working on a new album. It was a surprise to everyone then when Bobby was found dead in his hotel bed the next morning. The date was December 30th, 2010, the anniversary of Rasputin's death. Bobby died around the same time of mourning that Rasputin had, and also in the same city of St. Petersburg. There was no sign of violence, he simply just died. The official cause was heart failure, but the timing of it all was incredibly ironic. A lot of people still believe that Rasputin had mystical powers. Remember when he seemingly healed the sick boy from miles away? If Rasputin really did that, could he take revenge from the beyond? It's a weird thing to think about, but it's no weirder than anything else about Rasputin, and all of it is way past strange.
Hey man, watch your step.